We have a beautiful city, we have a beautiful country, you know.
He stood out. He was taller, better dressed, smiling.
Mandela, you know, I would say is a man of peace, and he helped us a lot.
This is the place of the forgotten people.
I think he would be proud though, as long as the message is positive.
We're in South Africa, where we've gone in search of a man who helped to shape a nation. We've journeyed to Cape Town, taken a boat to the infamous Robben Island, and visited Constitution Hill in Johannesburg.
We always call him the old man, but he don't like that. He liked to be called Madima.
We've heard of a man of deep commitment, principles and compassion. A leader prepared to weigh in and get his hands dirty.
It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve.
And, if necessary,
but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
To die for his cause.
He stood out. He was taller, better dressed, smiling. He was the personality of the leadership of the African National Congress.
The man? Nelson Mandela. Mandela's release from prison on February the 11th, 1990 was celebrated by millions across the country. The atmosphere was one of jubilation. Mandela himself, with his wife Winnie at his side, appeared jubilant, upbeat, happy. There was little doubt that he and his African National Congress would win democratic elections if they were held. But that was far from assured. The South Africa that Mandela returned to was very different to what he had left when he was sent to Robben Island in 1964. The townships of the 1950s and 60s had been full of the energy and hopes of an emerging black middle class. But the repressive acts of the Apartheid government during the 1970s and 80s destroyed that energy, those hopes, and any chance of the emergence of a black middle class. In 1976, the township youth rebelled against Bantu education and any form of authority. By the time Nelson Mandela was released, the townships were places of fear, of widespread violence, intimidation. An entire generation had sacrificed their education, and with it, any chance of employment. Now, Mandela was determined to build a solid future, one based on guaranteed rights and freedom for all South Africans.
One of the first things that he did when he was released from jail was to visit the committee of 12, I was one of them, that had been writing the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Significant is that you will see that practically
George Bezos, one of the Rivonia trial defense team, has known and represented Mandela for much of his life.
He said that we must draw a good constitution, a constitution which would not only be good for the African National Congress, but the country as a whole.
the guarantees of a solid constitution would help ease the fears of white South Africans, making it easier to negotiate the exit of the apartheid government.
He knew that the new country could not be a success unless its government was trusted by the people, particularly those that had exercised power for 350 years, and to a lesser extent the Zulus. And he tried to accommodate them.
Mandela and the ANC had prepared for this moment for decades.
What's so striking about it is that when he came out of jail some 27, 28 years later, he immediately started to give effect to what he had said at the time of his trial.
After his release, Mandela and South Africa's black majority anticipated a democratic election. But the apartheid government's demands during negotiations meant those hopes were frustrated. Political violence threatened to once again set South Africa on a path to civil war. Only just out of prison, Nelson Mandela was needed by his nation more than ever.
My message to those of you involved in this battle of brother against brother is this: take your guns, your knives, and your pangas and throw them into the sea.
The demands meant more sacrifices. A family very much in need of a father figure would once again have to take a back seat.
We also want to make another little presentation here to Mrs. Mandela. These are boxing gloves that were presented by Mike Tyson, who was sent.
Mandela's wife Winnie, who had acted as his mouthpiece during the years in jail, had been continuously harassed and persecuted by the authorities. Their daughters, Zinzi and Zeni, had grown up watching their mother persecuted. And Winnie herself had become increasingly militant. Her husband's release from jail might have offered some respite. Mandela's children had grown up while he was in jail. Instead, another generation would lose him too.
My illusions about that I was having him back were shattered. Because before then I thought, finally, you must remember, I grew up without a father because my father died when he was in prison. And for me, I had grown up with a very strong female influence, and perhaps I thought to myself that it was going to be time for me to reconnect with that part of my life, being the male figure. And those illusions are shattered because, I mean, I thought I would finally go and have coffee with him in a coffee shop and talk about what, you know, the relationship I had with my grandmother and granddad are completely different, in the sense that I could rock up to my grandmother and talk about anything under the sun, and yet with granddad, because he was like, if he was an icon when he was in prison, he became more of an icon when he came out. And he was sort of unreachable, because now you had to make an appointment to go and see him because he was inundated, because he had bigger issues to tackle.
Mandela's efforts to build trust between black and white South Africans led to one of the country's greatest triumphs. Its constitution, regarded internationally as a model of its kind. And yet, on our journey to find Mandela in the modern South Africa, we still came across a society that seemed highly divided. Driving around Cape Town, the stunning natural scenery, gardens and wine estates are in an instant replaced by the informal settlements that indicate a grinding poverty, which makes you wonder, has the transition to a post-apartheid South Africa envisaged by Nelson Mandela been fully realized? Have the country's townships really changed? To find out, we spent some time with a band from a township on the Cape Flats.
I go by the name of Zambulong Nande Desmond Mangunga. You know, I go by the name of La the last one, representing 3 Months Cup.
Cool, Iboma B, Sonabo Kambi from Gug 775 Cape Town. Peace out, 3 Months Cup.
I'm Bukhulubaki Nombecheni and I go by the name Ritondo. The MC was born by Indombia Gwampondo. Gugulethu stand up. 3 Months Cup is in the building.
My real name is Gugulethu, surname Bengesi. I'm from the clan Mtambo. Noveche ngoba nyathelo yadabuko phonsa umkhulu hlenza amakonyana kokwalo nkosanteni nkosabelungu. But my alias is El Nino. I'm the founding member of the crew.
I will make it. One day the purpose will dance. I will make it. Some chance. Cause they like the opportunity of the yellow ones. I will make it. One day the purpose will dance. I will make it. Some chance. Cause they like the opportunity of the yellow ones.
3 Months Cup has strong connections with the rural Eastern Cape, where Nelson Mandela was born. They rap mostly in Xhosa, the language Mandela grew up with. But it's the townships that connect Mandela and 3 Months Cup more directly. The band's Afrikaans name reflects the culture of South Africa's townships.
There's what we call in South Africa Tsotsi tal. Tsotsi is the word that means a thug. You know, not necessarily a thug, you know. But like, it is a mix of like different vernacular that in South Africa with the Afrikaans. Since we were living in the apartheid system and Afrikaans was the only medium of communication, you know. So like 3 Months Cup, it's just a Tsotsi, it's a mix of Afrikaans and Xhosa, you know. Because I would say to you, Exe, that's Afrikaans, but like if you go to Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Langa, every Soweto, like that person will actually relate immediately because it's a mix.
And though the band's name means crew of 3, it's a lot more than that.
By the time that I joined, I mean the name was already out there, so we couldn't change it. You know what I mean? So we kept the name even though there were 4 members, and then we grew from being just the crew now to a family. You know what I mean? Like everyone who does anything positive to support 3 Months Cup becomes a part of the family.
The band members are previewing their latest music video at a small production facility in central Cape Town. Regarded as an underground band and initially ignored by the mainstream media, their loyal following has grown, and their singles now get play on national radio.
How well? What do you think of them, basically?
The band's use of hip-hop expresses both the frustrations and aspirations of their township community. and emphasizes the close connection between the township, the countryside, and the outside world.
What's unique about them and what I was first attracted to about them is the fact that they really use their African heritage, you know, like hip-hop. They've taken an art form that's come from the United States and around the world, and instead of a lot of artists, you know, tend to kind of copy what's out there, they use their, you know, they very much use their background and their knowledge and their culture and take hip-hop and make it into something uniquely their own.
Apartheid and the decades of lost education may have taken their toll, but artists like the Dreamanskap crew are now shaping a culture confident of its own roots, its own traditions.
Someone suggested putting subtitles under their latest video, and the debate it caused was amazing because all the Xhosa speaking people were just vehemently against it, you know, like, why should we have to translate our language for anybody else?
Translated or not, the band's lyrics make one point very clear. Even today, a large sector of society is being left out of the country's transformation.
Dreamanskap represents the voiceless people. I'm the man who's hopeless, who's a drunkard, who has no hope in life, who thinks like buying cheap wine, that's the only way to survive. I'm that kid in the street who smokes glues. I'm that thug who goes into white people's houses and rob them and kill them. I'm that man in the parliament. I'm that pastor in the church. So it's us, you know. We are being influenced by everything that is around us.
I will take it. No, but when Chatela passed, then I was young as one day the purpose will done. I will take it. Some as I will touch my chance, cause they like the opportunity of being one.
The band has offered to show us their neighborhood, Gugulethu. It's not difficult to spot the Dreamanskap crew. We meet at a place of pride in the township.
Gugulethu 7 Memorial. It's a monument. Like 7 guys who were like ambushed by the police. You know, they were freedom fighters.
They may seem irreverent, but Dreamanskap are still rather in awe of struggle heroes like the Gugulethu 7 and Nelson Mandela.
Mandela, you know, I would say is a man of peace, and he helped us a lot by let's put down the guns, and like no more with the armed struggle. Let's reconcile the Rainbow Nation. Yeah, let the people own the mines, but even the people, the inhabitants of the indigenous people, at least they must have a share. You know, so that's why now there's BEs and you have black CEO, you have black middle class.
Beautiful one, by planet Earth.
A middle-class life may beckon, but the Dreamanskap crew feel that, like millions of other South Africans, they have been let down by the current leadership.
There is something that has been done wrong, you know what I mean? Maybe there is money that is kept somewhere, or money that is going to all the wrong places. You know what I mean? So this is gonna be a long conversation that's not gonna end now.
In the heart of Gugulethu is a home that, for years, has been at the center of a vast underground music scene.
Yeah, this is where everything started. You know? A lot of artists in Cape Town, you know.
It's here that township life is given a voice that resonates far beyond Gugulethu.
Yeah, man, this is Elder Zoro, man. I would say is the godfather, you know. The one who influenced most artists, you know, like in Cape Town, you know.
Zorro, who has just returned from Sweden, is producing a new creation from Ninja, a father of the local ragamuffin style. And Daddy Spencer.
Introduce yourself to the man. Right over there, it's my man, DJ Analog, you know.
As much as I do sing in English, you know, I need to kind of like balance it, you know, because at the same time, you want to keep the authenticity. You want them to say, this comes from Africa.
It's a place of inspiration, for a form of expression that the crew feel Nelson Mandela would approve of.
I'm sure he would be proud, like the way that things have evolved, you know, because back in the days you hardly, you know, found someone rapping in their own languages. As the time went by, like people started like discovering other methods and other ways of conveying the message, of which I believe like it's one of the things that he was standing for. You know, instead of going for the armed struggle, he said, no, let's have like peace negotiations, you know, of which he seeked and came through with a different method of resolution rather than like, you know, blood being spilled, you know. So I think he would be proud though, as long as the message is positive.
But Digi Analog wants to get a different point across.
There are songs that we talk about that are about the conditions that we live in here, you know. For instance, you have a toilet outside, you have a bathroom outside. It's a different kind of like condition from the urban, from uptown. You know, downtown is completely different. Before we even come outside, is when you take a shot of just those cables that you see there. That is illegal electricity. You know, people who steal electricity so that they can be able to, you know, cook water, boil water. We have a beautiful city, we have a beautiful country, you know. But I think if only, you know, as the time goes, if only we could eliminate these problems, which is never going to be so easy to do because it's, yeah, I mean, we are quite new in the democratic system.
We're now heading towards an informal settlement in Gugulethu. Gla hitches a ride.
Street, you know, hey Rasta, everything nice. Same. Yeah, we all live in the same street, you know.
He and the other band members share a close bond with this place, this society.
I grew up in Gugulethu, NY7 number 28, and my B lives at NY7 number 23. So his house is directly opposite to mine, yabo. So like we grew up together and we've been friends, you know. This is an informal settlement. It's called Barcelona. People that live here are the people that I would say the majority did not have, like we're not fortunate enough to like afford houses.
So these are the conditions that some people, you know what I mean, live under, which are not so cool, as you can see yourself, you know what I mean. So people struggle here, some survive here, you know what I mean. Some kill themselves here because of poverty and all. This is the place of the forgotten people.
Clearly, a large section of South Africa has still to benefit sufficiently from transformation. And there is a sense of growing impatience.
Don't focus, like you mustn't centralize the liberation. You know, I have to tell you that. You mustn't centralize it at all. Even though like the Mandelas and the Tutus, they are the people that we are bombarded by the media as if they're the only liberators in South Africa. I'll tell you about the Sabelo Palmers, the Chris Hanis, you know, and I would count, you know, like the list is endless.
There may be dissatisfaction now at the way many South Africans have been left out of the country's transformation. But in the early 1990s, it was Mandela who the country relied on to prevent all-out civil war. It was Mandela who kept the nation calm when top ANC leader and struggle hero Chris Hani was murdered by white extremists. And it was Mandela who distanced himself from his own wife, Winnie, when she was accused of being involved in the murder of one of her bodyguards. While Mandela initially supported Winnie's legal efforts, that soon ended, and he began divorce proceedings. Once again, it was the nation that came first. Finally, the government of F.W. de Klerk agreed to terms, and the date was set for South Africa's first ever democratic elections. Nelson Mandela had made sacrifice after sacrifice in order to help bring freedom to his people. And he was not the only South African to do so. But today, 18 years after democracy, the country clearly has some way to go. So were the sacrifices worthwhile?
Yes, they have been worth it. I now understand that to be the greatest man that you can ever be, sometimes there's certain things you sacrifice, even your own family, to get to where you want to go. And sometimes family can hold you back because of, of the responsibilities. But he shared all those responsibilities as if for the good of everybody. This is what I'm going to do.
He tried to persuade people of different persuasions that the best interest of the country was above all else. And had it not been for him, a bloody civil war was imminent, even after his release.
Now we are 18 years old. Materially, we have gained. Education-wise, every university now has got almost every university has got a black rector. The student population is very mixed. At school level, integration is taking place. Not fast enough, but it is taking place. So that there have been material gains. But what we have gained in '94, which no amount of wealth or professions can give you, is dignity.
Beautiful one, by planet Earth. Be my scalp. This one is for the one I love. You know who you are, girl. Katana Joe. My man, listen. She's the queen of my dreams, the girl that I see when I sleep. Catching it on and I condo will feel my beat. I'm easy as I no squeeze as I kiss as I free. It's a click like twins, I'm a piece and I'm easy on my cheek.